we're recording, whatever that means. Yeah. Okay then. So welcome everybody to Telos launch group call. I've got the wrong. Oh, that's better. That looks better. The usual early meeting notices. If you could fill in the roll call at the bottom of the agenda. I will keep posting the agenda into the chat, or if people can do that for me as well. It is on Slack, but when people come into the meeting, I didn't realise that you don't see all the chat, do you? You only see what you come in at, so some people might not find it. But the usual starters, please. We are obviously doing live stream, so we pride ourselves on our professional behaviour, and I think we've been noticed for that. So I will try and keep an eye on the meeting as much as I can. It is quite tricky to see 33 people on the call, so let's see where we go. I'm going to go to the first item on the agenda, which is to recap the takeaways from last week, which I'm not going to do other than we got our finalised governance documents passed. However, I do want to just drop back on the notice about the jurisdiction region. Douglas, can you or anybody jump in on that? Do we need to vote on that now? I've tried to follow it in Slack, but I think I got a bit lost.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Hi, Douglas Horn from Good Block. I would recommend, so we've been researching this. We gave ourselves a little over a weekend. I apologize, I was very sick this last weekend and didn't get as much done as I would have liked. But regardless, it is proving to be a little more of a issue that requires some research. And I would propose that we kick the can down the road a little bit longer, since I think we're all agreed that by looking at the launch checklist, we are highly unlikely to vote yes tomorrow on a go. We have a little more time, and I think that this is thorny enough issue that we should just do a little more research. You're muted, Jim.
Yeah,
whatever brilliance has been lost.
Thank you. So we'll just leave that one, and I will put that one in notes to bring forward to a next meeting, and we'll carry it through on Slack then. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I've got a slight note regarding here, which was which we might come to later, but we need to realise that as we're moving up to no-go votes, this group will be superseded, and this could be theoretically the last one of these meetings, because once we vote to launch, then we won't be meeting again. So we'll just bear that in mind and maybe think about that further down the line. Okay then, so it's my proposal to, well, on the agenda is to look at the Telos launch group, the Telos launch website, and discuss the checklist. Is everybody happy with the agenda as it is, or would we like to rejig the agenda? I suggest we look at the launch group, the launch website, if anyone wants to share their screen.
I'm happy to share if that's helpful.
Yeah, please. And then it's on the agenda to go through and have a look at the things that are green and et cetera, et cetera. That's what we're meant to be doing. So if we could have a quick look at that. I noticed, Douglas, that we've been there seems to be more yellows than there were before. Do you want to read?
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. There are, in fact, we had.
Sorry, Douglas, I think you might want to refresh that page.
Oh, I see. Moment. Yeah, thank you. We needed to. We had a meeting over at Good Block, and we had also in consult with some of the things that the Amplified Telos group was saying on the chats, And so we took a much closer look there. Some of the development code actually stepped backwards. It was everything was legitimately green, but as happens sometimes in computer testing, you test it and then on and then it works as programmed, but we discovered there was an actual a possible exploit in how the voting worked. It was not in the code. The code worked perfectly, but the strategy allowed for an exploit, which I believe Mata at Amplified Telos first discovered and brought to our attention. He's been an excellent code checker. Actually, I also want to say Justin out at I think Telos, New York. One of our many Justins, I apologize if I get the wrong one, also found some exploits there and brought those to our attention. And so we have a solution. We are working on it, but to be really honest, it was in the new voting system, and we just couldn't leave those green, knowing that there was an exploit that affected all of them, even though we have something in the works. So that's when we look at these here in the code area, that is largely what they were affecting. I'm not sure if this is put out together right, because I thought that inverse weighted voting was actually working, but regardless, that's definitely where the ratify, amend, worker proposal contract, arbitration contract, it affects all of those. Rather than reproduce all the notes from our meeting yesterday, there's like removal of non-producing BPs that is in testing now. The rewrite reg producer to include BP-JSON format. That is a rather small one. There's a number of small ones here. If we look at, there's a large number of small ones, but they do add up. I think.
Doug, can I interrupt you? I'm sorry, I don't have a video, but I want to know, what is the minimum that you're taking the BPs out that aren't producing?
So that's described in the text of the reg producer contract. And off the top of my mind, it's a bit technical, but off the top of my mind, I recall that it is we figure out how many blocks there are in a current schedule, and anyone who misses more than 15% of those of their allotted blocks is at risk for being removed. And also in a scenario where there is where several are down, we automatically produce the unreg the most kick. We kick the one with the lowest votes at any time, so we can pull them out one at a time to safely pull off those who large groups. We learned that off of our Hell Week a few weeks ago on the testnet.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
But yeah, you bet. But let's save granular questions. So some of these have gone yellow again. I think if you really look at it, to a little bit of a spoiler alert, I don't think there's a way that we're going to get all of these things green again by tomorrow morning, 24 hours from now. But it's not. I don't think the way to look at this is a step backwards. I think it's further testing. It's a triumph of further testing that we are and of transparency that we're saying, hey, we found some stuff. We're not proud. These things happen. The group found it, and we're doing it. That's the status.
Yeah, I'm going to stop you there, because I think I think it was important that we flagged up that we've got some. That this wasn't a surprise for tomorrow when people came onto the call. But I don't think there's going to be any value in us rehearsing the same discussion that we're going to have tomorrow, because I think we can discuss these points tomorrow and also get some timelines from hopefully various working groups on getting all this to green. So I'm going to suggest, if that's okay with everybody else, that we move on to the next item, which is item 4, which is the Telos improvement, the Telos tips. There's clearly been a lot of work done on these and a lot of information going on Slack. So we need to make a decision about how we are going to vote on these, whether we're going to vote on them. And basically, I'm only here to try and facilitate what you people want to do. I have I've tried to sort of create an agenda where we can see what the tips are. There's tip 12, which is Adam, which I'm not sure whether you've got your microphone, Adam, whether you want to talk about that and whether we want to vote on these tips. So I need to I would like to say that I don't know what to say, whether we're going to vote on tips or not, or whether we're going to vote on some of them or not all of them. I need a meeting to make a decision on that. Yeah, we can. Well, just hang on one moment, Adam. Am I going to get a view from the floor about how we want to move forward on this with these particular tips? Is this the forum to be discussing tips and voting on them?
I think it is. I think we should. These have been well discussed. I think we should. We should go. As you suggested in the agenda, that we should move forward on these. We should take them one at a time. We should open them up and see if anybody wants to discuss them. And after for a reasonable amount of time that you set, and then after discussion, we should see if we're ready to vote. I think that a lot of these things are taking up a lot of the air, and we need to. I think we should see where we stand and see if where everyone feels before we spend more weeks on them.
Okay, then. So we'll start with Adam. Yeah, Saeed?
I just wanted to say I don't see people here who has written those tips. So are we going to vote without them who has proposed these tips, or do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, we have Adam here who has proposed tip 12. So shall we do that one and get one out of the way?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go for tip 12 and Adam.
Okay. Okay, then. Thanks, Adam. Open the floor if anybody wants to talk about or discuss any issues to have with tip 12 further. Okay, Douglas, please.
To me, it seems like a very good common sense economic protection to separate any kind of salaries from any kind of budgets. I would support it.
Can I have a seconder for that, please?
I'll second that.
Okay, that was Phil, are you okay to do the notes on unusual things, please?
Yes.
Thank you very much. If you can record the chat votes as you did last week, that would be really great. Could I get someone to indulge me to write a question, please? Douglas, you're usually quite good.
I've already written it. If we have we actually? So, is there any discussion necessary, or are we actually called the vote?
At the moment, we've had no discussion and no one's come in. We've had a proposer and a seconder.
Of course, you are.
So,
it's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fine. We can vote on our own stuff. Yes, Nicole, you're able to vote. People are allowed to vote on this are the people who are on the call, who have been onboarded, and who are part of the Telos process. So on this particular call, you are allowed to vote. So if you just hang on a moment, if Douglas will type the question, and then it is yes for the tip to be passed and no for the tip to be refused.
Okay, so I've typed the question. Have we? So the question's been called and seconded to vote.
Yes. Yes.
Right. All right. It is now typed.
Thank you very much. If you could vote yes or no or abstain, please. Phil will capture that in the chat. Adam or Phil will work together and to give us a result.
Jim, while the votes are coming in, if I could make a proposal for possibly handling the next few tips.
Yes, Daniel, please do.
There's been quite a bit of intense debate and discussion regarding tips 13 through 19 on Slack. I was just going to pose the potential of just asking an open question. Is there anyone on the call who's undecided on this that requires discussion? Not if someone wants to debate, just the question of, is there anyone who's undecided? And if we're not undecided, we might be able to move through those votes a little more quickly without having too big a debate.
Douglas, would you like to contribute to that?
Sure. Great question, Daniel. I am not undecided, but there are some of these that I do not support in their current form that I might support in an amended form. Is that so? That would be worthy of discussion in my view.
If I may follow up on Douglas's point. So Daniel, thanks for sharing your feedback there. Broadly speaking, I think this is a really interesting test of our culture of governance right now. Obviously, we're a new network, and one of the reasons I was drawn to Telos is because everybody engages, for the most part, very civilly and respectfully. It's easy to do so when we are all in agreement, right? It's very easy to get along when we are all on the same page. But when there are contentious issues, that's when we really sort of expose the culture of governance that we're building. So to that end, obviously, there's been a lot of passion on both sides from the survey that I've distributed and also from the feedback I've been collecting independently. It seems like about a quarter of the people here are strongly in favor of all of the tips, and about a quarter of us are strongly opposed to all of them. And about half of us, on balance, support some, don't support others, are a little undecided on a couple of issues, and are amenable to being persuaded in one direction over the other. So my view is that these tips could benefit from being socialized a little bit more, not only internally within this group, but also externally to the broader Telos community. I know the people on Telegram, for example, are just getting exposure to that. And to Douglas's point just now, what I hope we can work out is a sort of intra-network compromise. So for me, I would love to be able to get sort of the voting that we just got on tip 12, where we can land on some numbers and some provisions for some of these tips that everybody can support. It may not be the ideal outcome for any one individual, but as a group, we feel comfortable with it. So for me, I would very much benefit from some ongoing discussion so I can get a better sense of where people are landing on various issues and what numbers and provisions we should revisit. And then we could perhaps modify the tips and then submit a modified version for debate. So my point of view is we should not be voting on these today. I'd like to sort of open the floor for general discussion. I can step away and just listen. But I would love to be able to work out a compromise so we're all comfortable with this and we can rock and roll and move forward.
That's fair. I withdraw my proposal.
Thank you.
I think it might be, I think that we do have a process. I appreciate what you're saying, Ian. I think that we have a process whereby we can move to debate for a limited amount of time, and then following debate we can move to vote. And this is a process we've established. It's worked well. I think that the large number of tips that we have are taking up a disproportionate amount of time and energy, and at times removing some of the congeniality from the discourse here that I think many of us have expressed enjoying. So I would propose that we move through the process, and that, as described and as we've done so far, discuss if people want to discuss, and then if we and see what we can get here. There's been plenty. I feel like there's been ample discussion in Slack on these to at least see where we stand. So that'd be my counter proposal.
Okay, James, would you like to say something? Oh, can I just say before you do so, James, I can't see everybody on my screen because we've got now 43 people on this call. So trying to manage this call is going to be a bit of a nightmare. If you want to speak, if you can just mention it in the chat as well as put your hand up, that will give me a better chance of actually getting everybody on board with this. So you have to bear with me. I'm trying to manage this call. James, please.
I just wanted to kind of second what Douglas was saying. There's been a lot of discussion here on these tips. We need to move on these a little more cleanly. I believe we should vote on them as they are right now. If Ian wants to make changes, have discussions with people and make changes and resubmit them separately, that we can vote on them again with different numbers, I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the point. Was if a tip's rejected, it can be you can bring a new one in with a new number. I mean, that's the way I would understand it, how it's worked. So I think that we need to just move through these one at a time, and unless anybody's going to really scream me down on that.
There is one more scenario that we can perhaps consider, which is, I know in conversations a lot of people have sort of made comments that, well, I could support tip X if tip Y were this number, right? Because they do sort of have impacts on each other, which is why I go back to the idea of coming up with an intra-network compromise. I mean, if we could roll these all into sort of one agreement that most people are generally supportive of, then we can have a much cleaner process. But if we do an up and down vote on each of these independently, we might not end up with the optimal outcome in terms of sort of, the economic effect of the network, and then also in terms of what we independently want to see come out of the voting process.
So Jim, if I may say something here, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think there are lots of discussions have been done on these tips, and I think none of us are undecided. And we should go forward and discuss what needs to be discussed and move forward. Because this is, taking the steam out of the launch. Our focus should be on launching a successful network, not on dividing people and delaying any of the processes on the good work that has been done by so many people here. I think we should move forward. That's my opinion.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say that we are going to move to vote on tip 13. Do we want, Ian, do you want to reintroduce the tip in the same way Adam did, and we'll go for a vote? If someone could pose the question at the same time, please.
So my understanding was that we were going to be having a discussion, right? And then people could call for a vote after the discussion period, or am I mistaken?
No, this is a discussion now.
Okay, and so you want to go independently on each tip?
That was my impression. Unless you want to do a bulk.
That's fine. That's fine. Let me, if I may, I'd like to sort of work backwards through these. I think tip 13 is probably the most contentious, and tip 19 is the least contentious. So maybe we can start with the easier item. So we'll start with tip 19. Go ahead.
I think I'd like to start with tip 13 because I think this is the biggest one for a lot of people. So I'd rather start with this one and work down, if that's okay with you.
We can certainly start there. The risk is that we might end up spending the rest of the call on it, but we can start with tip 13.
That's the case.
Okay. So let me share the link out there for anybody who doesn't have it convenient. So tip 13 is proposing that we lower the maximum airdrop to the EOS addresses. Obviously, you guys know my position, so I'll just introduce this very quickly and then let you guys jump in for discussion. But the effective rationale here is that if the purpose of the airdrop is to pay tribute to EOS and to engage the EOS network, 40,000 is probably more than is necessary to do so. If we lower it to 20,000, 98.75% of all the EOS addresses will not be affected. They'll still receive Telos one-to-one to their EOS. So that leaves 1.25%, or about an additional 1,000 addresses beyond that are affected beyond the 40,000 haircut. So we're still talking about a very small minority of larger EOS token holders who would be affected here. But the outcome is that it would open up more tokens, which could then be redistributed to the various systems that are supporting the network. So that's tip 13.
May I make a suggestion in terms of voting? If you are...
Sorry, can I only take discussion on the tip at the moment? Not about the voting, but just on the tip. Can I just...
But it doesn't... It will just affect the way we vote. So before we actually decide, because all these tips are related, interrelated.
Well, not necessarily, no, because this is a specific tip about 40,000 as opposed to 20,000. I only want discussion on this tip at the moment because we're not going to bulk vote all these tips. We've got to get through them.
I think Azad's point is that depending how tip 13 is resolved, that could affect people's positions on the subsequent tips.
Yeah, and also
I have a question. If we don't lower from 40,000 to 20,000, but we do want to increase funding to other areas, where would those tokens come from if they didn't come from the 20,000 reduction?
Exactly.
There would be new tokens added to the supply. So we would end up with a larger number of circulating tokens, which in theory would lower the actual price of each token if the market cap were to stay the same, unless we could find someplace else to take the tokens from. But given that 96% of the tokens are going to EOS, that's obviously the only place where we can take tokens out of the supply.
I'm waiting for other people. I'm not going to talk.
I just wanted to say, as I have said before, lowering the cap in general has been a contentious point to the public for Telos. We've messaged out 40,000 cap over and over again. It would, I think, project a message of disarray, of last-minute change and instability on Telos that I just don't think that we should incur right now. I think that we're at a precarious point. I think people are looking forward to launch, and I think that changing our stance on this is, I just don't think that's responsible.
May I ask, which stakeholders do you think would object to this the most?
I'm not sure that's relevant, really, is it? It's just we've had a move to vote on tip 13 and it's been seconded. So,
guys, please, I'm sorry. Let me interject here. I'm disappointed. I mean, the Amplify team has spent a lot of time working on these tips. We released it 8 days ago. I'm disappointed that after about 3 minutes of basic conversation that you guys are moving to vote. I mean,
we're not, Ian, it's my call. I will decide when we move to vote. Okay?
And I'm just expressing my disappointment with the process.
I will call to vote. At the moment we are discussing, I'm putting a 10-minute time limit on this, and we've got time to talk. So can we please respect that, and can we please, if you've got something to say, can you say it, please?
I'd just like to go back to the point where, sorry, Douglas, that these tips are interrelated, and one of the questions, where will the coins come from if we reduce or increase any of, it will not add up. So one of the things is, two numbers have been circulated to the community. One is the total amount of tokens that will be distributed, and I think that should not change. And the other one is the 40,000 cap. These are, I think, it's imprinted in kind of all the people who've been following Telos. There are some objections, and I see some of them sort of on Telegram and all that being quite unfriendly. But at the same time, I don't think that should really affect our judgment going down the line. So my earlier comment was that if you are really unsure and you don't really understand or the numbers, you haven't done your maths, you shouldn't vote yes or no. You should abstain on this vote and take your time. Yeah.
I have the same as Syed. I have the same understanding. These tips are, according to my understanding, they are interrelated. So if someone want to optimize, they are going to affect each other. So they are interlinked. So that's what I think Ian was saying, that he need to do some more homework to adjust them, to optimize them. But anyhow, it's not, the community has to decide.
I think what we do today will be affected by what we are going to decide tomorrow. If we are going to vote to go tomorrow, then we need to move with expediency on clearing all this up today. If we're not going to vote to go tomorrow, then we have a couple more days to roll it around and think about it.
We can't have a discussion based on what might happen tomorrow, Brett. We've got to vote on its merit of what it is at the moment.
Jim, can I speak?
I'll come to you in a moment, Douglas.
Hi everyone. It's Richard Telos. Going back to the discussion that we've had on Slack regarding these tips. First of all, I support Azad's position that they're all interlinked, and we can't technically separate them out. And maybe they should have been proposed as one tip with subheadings to each one, to bring down to each point. But more specifically, my understanding of the pushback against these tips was perception to the community. And my takeaway from the discussion that have been had regarding these tips was deferring back to the community. And over the last few days, I've seen Ian posting these tips into the Telegram groups and trying to secure direct feedback from the community. And I think it's only fair that we allow the community's voice to come into it now. Otherwise, it more or less invalidates the assertion that putting this through will paint a bad light in the community when we haven't asked the community itself. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Douglas, do you want to come in for a moment?
Yeah, thank you. For a counterpoint, I actually do not agree with the fact that these are all interrelated. We selected a number, and we were very clear on our initial messaging. I think anybody who was here in the early days, we got a lot of pushback from the community that we were redistributing tokens, and we were very clear that we were not. We were making a very distinct choice that allowed broad voting to be meaningful, and we were not taking the even though we were printing additional tokens for different reasons, we were not printing tokens we were very clear we're not printing them out of the tokens that we were removing. Now that we're talking about this, that removing more tokens allows us to print more for other reasons. We're going directly, for other purposes. We're going that messaging is a whole new level of messaging that directly counters what we were discussing initially, right? And I think that I think that there is no set number that we are stuck with, right? I think they can each be viewed by their own merits, because while we have been messaging a certain amount, there are tokens that we were probably going to have to print 20,000 tokens to provide RAM, right? Similar to what EOS did. There's not some fixed number that we have to draw down other amounts to add to. They could each distinctly be enacted, and for that I point to Ian's original article introducing them, that they could be done in whole or in parts, and so I think that this messaging that they must be voted together is not accurate, and not even accurate to what Ian originally wrote about.
Douglas, may I please respond to that? So correct, we certainly can vote on these independently. The point that I and I think others are trying to make is that we should consider them holistically, because depending on how one of these tips is resolved, that could influence how other tips are viewed. So although we could vote on them independently, I don't disagree with you on that. What I want to see is have discussion on all of these so we can get a better understanding of how people fall on these 7 tips. And then even perhaps ideally work on a single tip that rolls in, compromises, and has one sort of proposal that everybody votes on. I think that would be the ideal process. But, obviously I'm not in charge. So.
Well, I don't think anyone is, I think it's been suggested already that could be done in a future tip. If you think that these, so now we've all been introduced to these concepts. It looks like we're moving towards a vote. No one is suggesting at all that you not be allowed to come back with, an additional tip. And if you think that they're best discussed holistically, I think the way forward would be to take the temperature of the group, to see where we are, and then maybe to come back with what you've learned both from this and from talking to the community, and try to craft something that if it must be looked at holistically, then that it does that within one tip.
So your suggestion is we take the remaining time to discuss these, we hold off on a vote, and then that gives us a little bit more time, let's say a week or so, to work on sort of a revised tip that can accommodate the concerns of the community. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
No, not exactly. I'm suggesting that we follow the process that Jim has set up. We discuss as necessary, we vote if moved and seconded, and that depending on the outcome, if they are not passed or not passed to your satisfaction, that you come back with an additional tip that incorporates the learnings of this vote and community discussion.
So we're going to move to a vote, and then whatever the outcome of the vote is, you can then take those results, and if they're passed, they're passed. If not, if you wish to revise on a holistic tip, then obviously you've got every right to do that. You haven't said anything. Is there anybody who wants to make a comment before I move to ask for a proposal and a seconder on tip 13?
Yeah, I'll make a comment. This is Marlon. So just to wear my CEO hat for a second here, this is reflective of starting a venture, right? When you start a venture, you develop your business model. You think about revenue streams and how to against tip 13, Ian and team, is because as part of developing any business, you've got to develop communications around that, right? So for the past 3-4 months, we've been communicating a specific vision with the broader community, our constituents, potential customers, and users of the platform. And to alter it at the very last minute without having yet realized whether this business model will work or not, I believe is a bit premature. So again, I sort of relate this to starting a venture, communicating a specific message to the market, and altering that message at the last minute prior to testing whether there's product market fit. And for that reason, I will vote to not support tip 13.
Okay, thank you, Marlon. Thank you for that. I think that adequately. I'm going to, unless anybody particularly wants to jump in, I'm going to call the discussion on tip 13 to a close, and I'm going to ask for a proposer and a seconder that we move to a vote.
Yeah, I think it's already been proposed and seconded, Jim.
Can I do it verbally, please? Can someone read the...
Yeah, you got it again from Brett and from Mark, seconded.
Okay, thank you very much. If you can make a note of that, Phil. Hopefully we've got someone to type me a question. Thank you, Douglas. So it's going to be a straight yes or no vote. Yes to pass tip 13, no to reduce tip 13. If you'd like to vote now, please. While the vote's coming in, could we also make sure that we filled in the roll call? I think the roll call on this document is particularly important. I think it was my bad. I think I put in the wrong agenda for the call for tomorrow, so apologies for that. Can you double check on today's agenda that everybody's name is in there? And apologies if you're going to have to do that twice. That was my fault. I've only got 30 people typed in at the moment. And could you also type if you have got a proxy from somebody else as well? And I've got a couple already. And the protocol is that we notify proxies, notify me before the meeting. You have a proxy, please.
Yeah, it looks like we have 41 people in the call, which is amazing, by the way. Maybe a new record, but we only have 30 people on the agenda.
Yeah, so hopefully people can move to that now. That is like I say, my mistake. Can you double check the agenda roll call? But you might have to do it twice because I think that was my mistake putting the wrong document up. Okay then, so thank you very much to everybody. As soon as I get the numbers, I will verbally say those for the live feed. If we can go to tip 14, please.
Sure. So let me recirculate that really quickly in case anybody wants to reference it. So this is tip 14, and it proposes increasing the founders reward pool from 6 million Telos to 20 million. I'm sorry, to 25 million. I don't know why the link. Yes, to 25 million. And effectively the idea there is that all of us really have made a tremendous amount of personal and financial sacrifice to support this network before it can distribute capital. Under the current arrangement, about 1.8% of all the circulating Telos will be distributed among over 100 launch contributors, which frankly doesn't strike me as a very generous contribution, especially given that most ICO projects, which are one business that's executing the ICO, are holding on to at least a third of the tokens that go out into circulation. So this would increase it to 25 million. And that will, obviously increase the share to about 5% or so of the tokens to be distributed amongst the 100 or so launch contributors. Another motivation here is we obviously don't know how Telos is going to perform in terms of price, but given the general lack of liquidity in the altcoin markets right now, given the sort of prolonged nature of this bear market, given the looming threat of a potential Tether implosion, it's very possible that we're going to continue in a bear market for quite a while. And so this would just increase the amount of Telos we have so that as we need to sell Telos to sustain operations, we can still hold on to a portion of our treasury for long-term interests. So that is tip 14, increase the founders rewards pool to 25 million Telos. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. The floor is open. Jan, please.
Yes, and one of the most important things that Telos has tried to do is get rid of the whales. And obviously, with 6 million coins, those will be the biggest voters. And with 25 million or 20 million, 25 million, there will be several people with 1 million coins, and they will de facto be the new whales. And I think that hurts too much what Telos is standing for. It's not compatible with the ethos, so I would be against that.
Okay, Daniel, do you want to contribute to this?
Certainly, thank you, Jim. Just to further what Jan shared just now, early on when we established the Telos project and we got some of our very earliest feedback from the community, at the time we were talking about having 6 million tokens attributed to 6 ABPs that would start the network. And one of the biggest and greatest concerns that was raised from the community almost universally was we would have a network that was focused on not creating whales and immediately create 6 whales that had no restrictions on voting. So that was probably, I think, our first decision as a group to eliminate that, specifically for the reason of not creating individuals that had that much power over the network. And if we're simultaneously considering limiting the cap from 40,000 to 20,000, and then also considering to raise the foundation tokens, I think that goes in the polar opposite direction of everything we've heard from the community and frankly, what Telos represented from the beginning. The other thing I'd like to comment on is that it's really not fair for us as block producers, candidates, or even if you're not a block producer, if you're a member of the foundation, to start divvying out Telos tokens before we have a market valuation based on hypothetical speculation. I think that's a dangerous and slippery slope. We have no idea where the market's going, and I don't think it's our business to decide our pay at the expense of the community sentiment based on speculating on the market.
Okay, I've not got anybody else lined up in the chat. Does anybody else want to contribute?
Gary Huff from Blind Block Art.
Gary.
I may be for this tip if the value was lower, but at 25 million, I have to vote no.
Jerry, may I ask, what value are you comfortable with?
I'm not sure. I have to discuss further with the network, but the figure of 12 million was thrown around.
Okay, I think that sort of goes to what was said on the earlier part of the call, so that gives you some feedback on that, Ian. Anybody else?
Yeah, one data point, but I'll take it. Go ahead.
This is Brett Jeffrey. So initially we were talking about 6 million tokens for 6 founders, but now we're up to 100 people splitting up 6 million tokens. Is that correct? How does that create whales? So you lost me.
Well, I think the point is that it doesn't, and the point is, I think that Daniel and Jan was saying that if we pass tip 14, sorry if I'm speaking for you, Jan and Daniel, if we pass tip 14, we will be creating whales, which is something that we tried not to be doing. I think that's what the sentiment of those two.
Well, we had 6 million tokens for 6 teams. That's 1 million, but 25 million tokens for 100 teams isn't anywhere close to the amount that we were originally talking about.
The only problem with that, Brett, is that we do have some people that are filling out slices for honorable, good, hard work that could inadvertently create whales still. There's been some discussion in the Slack about that as well. Your point's noted, though, about the 100. I see where you're going. Frankly, we'd have certain team members that have been dedicated to this thing more than full time that could inadvertently create whales from that, and that was the point I was trying to make.
If I may comment on the whales discussion, I'd like to make 2 quick points. So the first is it's inevitable that the tokens will end up circulating in such a way where certain stakeholders, whether they be individuals or teams, will accumulate a disproportionately large amount of tokens. That's just inevitable in a free market like this. Like we know, regardless of how these tips work out, Good Block is going to be a whale. And I take no issue with that because I think Good Block deserves that compensation for the effort it's been made. But if the idea is to reduce whales, then quite frankly, that's an impossible standard to achieve. And it's not even a healthy standard because for the teams that have invested a lot of resources, they do deserve appropriate compensation. The second point I'll make here is that I feel much more comfortable having whales that are coming from the launch group because these are teams that have demonstrated a commitment to Telos than coming from other areas. And so I find it a little bit ironic that we just voted down tip 13, which would have reduced the concentration of political and economic power among EOS token holders. And yet we're opposing tip 14 because it will increase political influence on the Telos contributors. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there that I struggle to resolve.
Okay, thank you for that, Ian. I don't really want to be part of this discussion, but I just want to throw this into the mix. On the PR side of this, if we are seen to be increasing our percentage and voting ourselves more money, so to speak, how's that going to come across from a PR point of view? But I'll leave that out there. Yes, Douglas.
I'm largely going to stay out of this because I posted something that had Good Block's position. I would like to say, as as the whale in the room, as the likely whale in the room, I have pledged, and we have pledged at Good Block, that though we will get a very large section of the tokens, most likely, we are going to publicly post our policies to mitigate any negative effects of this, and hopefully only use them in very positive ways. For example, I've been talking to both dApps and exchanges about providing either staking power to smaller dApps or newer or dApps we're getting on, and also liquidity pools to other to exchanges and things like that to use these to enable them. I will also, I've mentioned this to people here, I will be posting, if this does actually happen, a policy around my voting or our voting any tokens we have, and also around selling any tokens that we may have. I intend to treat this as long as I'm in any position of trust in the in Telos, that's block producer, anything to any of us on the board, anything like that, I will treat this like a director of a public company, which I think is actually how crypto leaders should. And so I'll be posting something along the lines of, I won't sell any meaningful portion without 2 weeks notice ahead of time for the entire community. So I will take as many mitigating actions as possible to make this a positive, and that is all I'll say. But I wanted to be very clear about that, because it's a real concern.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. Have we got any other comments other than that? I'm just going to ask if we could, if there's any more comments, then I'll take those. If not, I'd like to move to a vote. So I need the vote to be called for and seconded, please. Jan, are you proposing that we...
Seconded.
Sorry, have we got a proposer for the...
I'll propose then. Jan's already seconded.
Yeah, thank you. Douglas, do you have the question ready for the chat?
I have actually posted it in the chat.
Oh, sorry, you've beaten me, guys. Can we not put anything in there until we... Can we just stick to yeses and nos under the question, please? I will say again, we have 42 people on the call. We are up to 37 on the roll call. If you aren't able to type, then maybe that's why. But so we're still a couple of people live on the roll call. But I may be able to rectify that through the chat. So hopefully everybody who is able to type on the roll call has been able to do that. Okay. If I go up to tip 15, please. Once everybody's voted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Should we give the vote another 30 seconds or so?
I think they're coming in. I think people can do two things at once, James, hopefully. Ian, thanks.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and introduce tip 15. Very similar logic to tip 14. Tip 15 is proposing that we increase the contribution to the Telos Foundation from 6 million Telos to 20 million Telos. Once again, I'll resurface the link here for anybody who doesn't have it convenient. And effectively, the reasoning here is, again, we don't understand how the tokens are going to perform. Amplify believes they will perform poorly. We want the foundation to be sufficiently capitalized. There are a lot of blockchain networks and projects out there that have hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in operating capital. The foundation is one of two mechanisms that we have, or one of two moving forward to finance value additive activities for the network. So this will give the foundation more firepower to sustain the network early on when, during the critical sort of like launch phase, and then also into the future. So tip 15, increase funding for the Telos Foundation from 6 million Telos to 20 million Telos.
Okay, guys, the floor is yours.
Sukesh from Telos Green here. Ian, have you got any feedback regarding the number? Because you have been collecting some feedback so far, so I have seen some discussions around, and I would like to support if it's a number less than 20 million.
Well, I've been asking repeatedly. I've asked people independently. I've asked people in various chats to share with me the numbers and the provisions that they'd be more comfortable with. I'll be honest, I haven't gotten a lot of feedback. I haven't found a lot of people that are looking to work out a negotiated solution. So my sense is that there are some people that would support this if the number were lower. Certainly, I'm comfortable reducing the number, but I haven't gotten very constructive feedback in that regard.
Okay.
Is it more of just an arbitrary number, or?
No. Yeah. So good question. So this goes back to tokens. 6% is not a lot. I think many token projects, when they sort of think about how they're going to allocate their tokens, they end up giving much more to their foundation and to various sort of groups that are supporting the network. So I thought 6% was a healthy number. Certainly, I want to see it be higher than 1.8%, which is what we are currently dealing with if it remains at 6% or 6 million rather.
Anybody else want to come in?
Yeah, this is Brett. I think you can always take excess funds and redistribute them. But if you're underfunded, everybody's going to not want to give up any tokens to fund the thing.
Douglas?
So I don't know, Ian, if you've seen this. I published several days ago the good block position. And in the good block prediction, we did say that we strongly oppose the current value of 25 million tokens. But if the number was lowered to 12 million tokens or less, I'm sorry, I would say we would support a more modest increase. We oppose, I apologize, in tip 15, our position is we oppose this proposal at the current level, but would support a more modest increase in Telos Foundation funding. To add a little bit more to my reasoning, our reasoning for that, actually, the Telos Foundation is the primary source of funding for basically anything that needs bootstrap funding. We just recently took on the responsibility of insuring the arbitrators. We don't know exactly what that's going to cost. I think we all agree that was an important thing to take on to make the arbitration system work, to be able to get good arbitrators and have them feel comfortable. But that's an expense we don't know. I think that, Ian, I actually support some additional funding for this. I would like to be clear. This is not funding that goes. This is funding that goes to the system. It's not funding that goes to anyone. It may, people here may, but this is ongoing development. I think it is important to discuss this. I personally think that the number is too high, but this might be a forum where we could have some straw poll discussions about numbers that people might support and work forward there.
Anybody else?
So in that, let me suggest that we look at 12 million. Can we have some theoretical discussion around 12 million? Ian, are you comfortable with us suggesting new numbers here?
So I absolutely want to hear discussion from people and people's feedback. And it sounds like you're not the only person, at least based off the chat here, that would be open to 12 million. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to amend the tip right now, vote on 12 million and pass it, because again, I'm still hopeful that we can think about a larger compromise that cuts across all of these tips. So this is constructive. This gives me sort of one place to build off of for sure. But I don't want to take this as like the only victory on behalf of the tips. I think that there's still more opportunity to revisit the token economy as a whole.
Yeah, I would sort of second that. I think you're getting a lot of information here. You're saying that you're not getting a lot in some of the Slack channels with actual numbers. There's a lot of stuff in the chat which we can capture, and
absolutely,
I would try and sort of put that down in some sort of essence, and that will give you a better chance to come back with some others. James, you're waving at me.
So yeah, this is Brett.
Hang on, Brett, please. Yes, James.
I just wanted to suggest maybe Ian would want to withdraw this tip, since it seems like it's either going to be part of a larger set of tips, or this one might be approved by itself with a different number. Just let's not approve it then if we're not ready for it, and then let's change it and approve one with a valid number in place.
So I just had a quick. This is Brett. I just had a quick question. Let's say something untoward happened, and the token price is in the dumpster, and the arbitrators have chewed through a big bunch of it. Where would we go to get more funding? That's a question. That's not a comment.
I think worker proposals would be the only alternative source,
which would detract funding from engineering efforts, correct?
Yes, and marketing efforts could be anything.
Mm-hmm. To solicit some feedback, may I ask you all, how would you feel about a provision where, let's say, we allocated $12 million to the foundation immediately, but then for, say, 8 years, there was another sort of 8 million tokens that was locked in a contract, and every year distributed 1 million tokens to the foundation. So it basically creates kind of a long-term allowance for the foundation, so it can use that for budgeting purposes in the future. Is that something that people might find intriguing or useful?
Definitely, I would say. I think something which can be looked into.
Okay, can I just see if I can move this along a little bit? I think you've got two options. The meeting's got two options here. We could either ask Ian to withdraw the tip and to come back with with another tip, or revise that tip with different numbers, taking on board what the meeting says, or we can vote on the tip and then you can come back again. Now, I think that's I'll give that choice to you, Ian, whichever way you'd like to do it.
Amplified will withdraw this tip for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay then, so we don't need to vote on that. Just a quick update on the votes so far. Just for the record, tip 13 voting results was 4 yes, 30 no, and 4 abstain. Tip 14 was 6 yes, 30 no, 6 abstain. So both tips were not voted through. Okay, so tip 15 has been withdrawn. Thank you for that. And tip 16, Ian?
Yeah, so tip 16, and I'll share that here as well. This is an idea to accelerate adoption and interest in Telos outside of the EOS and Telos community by funding a giveaway contest of 10 million Telos. We don't have to resolve the details of the contest, but the idea for now is that we would sort of create a pool, or rather capitalize a contract with 10 million Telos that will be given away to people freely. So they won't have to contribute any sort of capital in order to participate. There would be some sort of registration process in order to participate in this contest, because we do want to make sure that one person gets sort of one entry. But as a community, we can work out the details of what that contest would look like, whether it be sort of a one-time lottery, or if it be sort of an ongoing contest that distributes tokens on a daily basis. Once we have the details of the contest resolved, worker proposals could come in to build the actual interface and infrastructure for managing the contest. Once that is tested and approved, the block producers could vote to move the tokens out of this contract into a separate contract that would effectively launch the contest. The purpose of doing this is severalfold. For one, I think it would be an amazing way to showcase the technology. I think a lot of people that don't really understand blockchains could sort of see what it's like to have an experience being governed by smart contracts and to be automated and so on. I think it'd be an amazing marketing effort that can increase the profile of Telos beyond our immediate community. They can get a lot of people from other blockchain networks interested to register. And it could also create a communication channel. We could perhaps collect email addresses through the process, which could be held in the custody of the foundation. And that could be used to share useful information and updates about Telos moving forward. So this is just some capital to kind of give away. And I think it could be really productive. I see a couple questions here about whether or not this could be done through a worker proposal. In theory, it could be. But again, the worker proposal system as currently structured isn't going to be distributing a tremendous amount of tokens. And I think it's very possible that those tokens are going to be, the immediate demand for those tokens will be engineering efforts. So the idea here is without having to take away from the worker proposal system, we can just create 10 million tokens right now for this purpose. And that will allow the worker proposal system to be fully capitalized and focus on other value additive functions.
The floor is open, guys. If you want to tell me in the chat or you want to come on there, just please come and hear views of the floor. Just wait, just one moment, Douglas. I'm just going to see if I can get anybody else in. Okay, Douglas, off you go.
Okay, I was just trying to start out. This feels to me definitely like something that we should let everybody vote for as a worker proposal system. That's just my feeling.
That was my first thought, but anybody else want to comment? Daniel, please.
Thanks, Jim. Just to tie back to some of the comments going back and forth in chat, my concern here is mostly over voter dilution. It's hard to comment on this without commenting on the other tips, but I just want to point out that if we generate 10 million new tokens at our current allotment, I'm concerned about that possibly having a negative effect just because that's such a large value.
I hear what you're saying. I think we're getting to the stage where I'm feeling that there's a lot of the work that Amplify's done and the work that Ian's doing is, I'm personally feeling, I don't know how you feel, Ian, is that it feels like we should be coming back with one holistic rework tip, but I'm happy to go to a vote if you want to go to a vote.
Sukesh from Telos Green here. Ian, I have actually discussed this with you in private chat as well. My issue with this proposal, to be honest, is like there is nothing called free money. And when you give out free rewards, in general, I don't think you get valuable users, to be honest, who will stay for a long time and who believes in the vision. They just come for free money and then they just go away. And they may even sell tokens and it may even drop the price.
So I would, my response to that is that there's going to be a funnel here, like in all cases. The top of the funnel will be the people that learn about the contest and Telos but don't participate. The next ring of the funnel will be people that do participate in the contest but don't engage Telos in the long run. And then you go down and you will end up with some people that are introduced to the project through this contest that receive tokens that then find information for how to contribute to Telos and decide to do so. So it'll be a percentage. I don't know what that number is. But I think that if this contest is properly structured, we could end up with hundreds or perhaps even thousands of long-term contributors.
Agreed. Like that's the reason we had this Telos community rewards pool. That was the main reason to encourage community members who are really committed to support Telos and work together with Telos, and we are rewarding them accordingly. And I would support to have such kind of initiatives. But when we think about the scenario, we cannot really measure the return of investment in a normal business setup. And I don't think you will really get a value customers.
Thank you, Sukesh.
Right. I mean, I do see some benefits in this, which is bringing in new people from outside the EOS community. something that can be utilized where, as part of you winning those tokens, you will need to download the wallet, and with the wallet you get the coins, for example. What I'm more concerned is the amount, the 10 million. So I think if we can reduce that number, that will not dilute the value of Telos, but we can utilize in such a way that we bring in new people into the Telos EOS space.
Okay, thank you, Azad. Ian, I'm going to move to you. Do you wish to take the
hello.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yes, I want to say something. I think this kind of budget is good for marketing. I mean, these numbers now doesn't make sense because I said Ian calculated percentages based on the whole package. So now, as an individual tip, maybe it's looking too big, but as Azad said, this kind of marketing efforts are needed to bring new value. I mean, if we talk about the current community rewards, I think last time I heard about 200 people registered. 200 people are not enough. We need to bring maybe thousands of people in the long run. So I think we need something like this, but now it does not make sense to pass this tip alone, because now I am lost that because it doesn't make sense as it is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Saad. Ian, I'm going to ask you whether you wish to go for a bit, or the other option is to withdraw all tips at the moment and come back with a holistic or a reworking of the tips at a future date. Now you have some information.
Yeah, so I appreciate the feedback. I would just make this one comment in regards to the community rewards pool. Absolutely, I think this is a useful mechanism, but it's only rewarding people that have supported Telos pre-launch. Once the network is live, we'll be in a much better position to grow the community and bring more contributors to it, people that weren't familiar with the project beforehand or perhaps weren't motivated to do so. So I think the two are targeting different types of people, although people from the community rewards pool, as well as all of us in our extended networks, could contribute in the contest. So I'll leave that comment there, and then I'll go ahead and withdraw this particular tip 16.
Thank you. Roger, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm sort of sat here feeling a little bit like we've been on here a long time, and I know Ian's done a lot of work, and I'm just kind of wondering if there ought to be some sort of idea of just having one tip, any person just having one tip out at a time, which would kind of force you to think about what's the most important thing you feel about needs improving, and funneling that into a single proposal. Because Ian, you've got 42 people here whose time you've sort of dominated, if you like, for want of a better phrase. So I'm kind of feeling like I need to move to let's get these pushed down the road a little bit so everybody can move on. But maybe you guys all got to carry on. I have a slightly different schedule, so.
If it makes you more comfortable, we can just very quickly introduce the remaining tips and give people a chance to comment, and then Amplified can move forward and withdraw them.
Daniel?
Thanks, Jim. Just to ask a question, if we withdraw these and come back with a tip later, are we basically saying that tomorrow's a no-go already? Because as I understand it, these tips would have to be resolved before we can finalize the vote. That's my one concern about kicking it
I
down.
will say from the network maintenance, we are not ready to go tomorrow.
Can we just hold back with discussions about tomorrow until tomorrow? Ian has put forward that he's willing to just get a little bit of feedback on the rest of the tips and then withdraw them. So I would just like to give Ian the opportunity to just take 5 minutes feedback on the outstanding tips for him to have enough to go back to reintroduce if he needs to, and then the tips will then be dealt with, and we can look at tomorrow afresh.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. So I'll run through this quickly for you all. So tip 17 here proposes that we capitalize the worker proposal fund with 10 million Telos upon mainnet launch. So the concern here, of course, is that the worker proposal fund will effectively be broke. It won't have any capital when we launch. And that, of course, is the system that is going to be financing engineering and marketing. But as we're now revealing through this conversation, other potential ideas like a hackathon or maybe a contest giveaway So I think it's very important that we have capital ready to go that can start to be allocated to different contributors. So tip 17, capitalize the worker proposal fund with 10 million Telos upon mainnet launch.
If you could, if you've got any questions regarding the numbers, if you could put those numbers in the feedback for Ian, and if you could help Ian out by putting your numbers and your analysis for why you've got the numbers on the Slack channel, that will help him out. Okay, Ian, could you go to the next tip, please?
Sure.
Sorry, what moment? Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, a particular thing that would be helpful. I think Dash is the only good we're running example at the moment. I've not heard them being concerned with having too little into the fund. Maybe you can make a comparison with that.
Well, Dash introduced its worker proposal system several years after Darkcoin had been operating. So I don't think that's probably the best comparison, because they learned from firsthand experience that they needed some sort of a worker proposal system. Decred has something similar. This isn't an issue once the network is live and it's already well capitalized. It's just a question of how much capital do you want to immediately unlock? And this tip, like the others, may not land on the right number, but the basic proposal is that this network is going to be much healthier if we have some capital immediately at our disposal.
Okay, thanks for that, and thanks for that contribution, Jan. Again, if I could really encourage people to help Ian out in the Slack channels with some detailed analysis and help him out with the numbers, then if you could go to the next tip, please, Ian. We are running up close to time.
Certainly. So the next tip here is, and I'm not able to, oh, here we go. This is tip 18, front load the Telos inflation schedule. So again, when you run the numbers under bearish scenarios where Telos is earning less than $1 a coin, or maybe even less than 50 cents or less than 20 cents, the amount of compensation that both the worker proposal fund and the block producers will receive won't be sufficient to run financially sustainable operations. The expectation, of course, is that at some point the market will return to a bullish nature. And of course, Telos will be able to grow in value as we deliver real market successes. But at least immediately, we're not going to have those sort of benefits. So with tip 18, we're just accelerating the amount of payout over the first few years and gradually reducing the payout to both the block producers and the worker proposal fund up until year 7, which is when we'll reach the current state of 1.5% inflation to the WPF and 1% inflation to the block producers. So we will get to the 2.5% inflation, but we give ourselves a few years of a front-loaded schedule. And if you open the tip, you can see a graph that breaks down the proposed schedule there.
Okay, thanks for that, Ian. I'm going to move you on. Again, I'm going to appeal if you can help Ian out with any analysis in the Slack channels to help him form the next tips. The final one, 19, please, Ian.
Of course. So 19, set a 1-year expiration date for unclaimed Telos in the Exchange Token Reserve Fund. So this is the fund that we will be creating so that we can then allocate tokens to exchanges so that EOS token holders can claim their Telos. The motivation here is that we need to create a sense of urgency among the exchanges and also give their users a reason to pressure the exchanges to enable support. Obviously, the sooner that exchanges support Telos, the better the token will perform in terms of price and the more liquidity options we will have. 1 year strikes me as a very reasonable time frame. So if they don't enable support within a year, the remaining tokens in that fund will be burnt. And then the exchange will not be able to claim any more tokens.
Okay, thank you for that, Ian. We have got, again, I think we've got a lot of valuable stuff in the chat. And again, I will ask people to put in any analysis. And can we stick to analysis, please, in the Slack channels regarding Ian's work on this? We've now got a choice to carry on with. We have a couple more tips to go through, which is blind block art tip 21 and 22. Can I get a feeling from the meeting? We are pushed past our 1 hour 15. We have had 2 hour calls before now. I'm going to press on and until we get people dropping off for a little bit longer. So I am going to press on and ask Jerry if he could introduce his tip 21, please.
Yes, Jerry Huff from Blind Block Art. Tip 21, basically, the network maintenance group feels that there's a commission that was left off of the pie slicing chart, and that is for the dedicated group of people that have been working tirelessly to get a launch method and practice down without, sacrificing their own block producers, and that should be rewarded.
Any discussion from the floor, please? Douglas.
If anyone who has looked at the volume of work being done in the launch channel, and I know that some of these are locked channels. There's an amazing amount of work being done. I think that there is some commission that is due to these groups, especially if we are going to be locking the worker proposal system prior to the work that they're doing. This may be a better way to capture that. I have questions for clarification with the way that the tip is actually written. I don't know if the 20,000 for 10 ABPs is a total of 20,000. I don't know if it's 20,000 telos or 20,000 slices. I would like more clarity there and some discussion. I personally feel that worth discussing. I think that value is definitely being created by the people who are doing that work.
This was to be added to the pie slicing chart, and it's 20,000 slices.
And is that total? Because at 20, and maybe James or Rob could let us understand what that is, and is that in total for everyone, or to be divided, or is that each?
That was each, and that was down from the 1 million that the white paper said the APBs were going to get. Okay, James.
I just want to say that is, I'm not suggesting that this is for it or against it. I'm simply saying that this is pretty far out of scope compared with the rest of the commissions that we have. I think the highest commission that we have is a tier 1 exchange at 10,000. I think most commissions are in the 500 to even a high of 2,000. So so I would say 20,000 per is really a large commission.
I want to say something. I think these commissions, I agree that they deserve commission, but these commissions there should be some match between the stage 1 commission, which is 200 slices, and this is 20,000. Secondly, this commission should be for the person who is doing the work, because in these cases, there's some people who are running multiple nodes, but only one person is using. So it should be based on, first of all, person, and then there should be some kind of reference with stage 0 or stage 1. Yep.
The number is open for discussion. That was just a starting point, and yeah, I mean, 8,000 would be, and we could amend it.
The work being done is much more than stage 0. I will tell you, it's much more. This is really getting down to brass tacks. They have run. Can JT or Jerry say? Can you give everybody a little background? How many times you've launched a whole new network? I think that would be helpful.
I think we're up to 14.
Yeah, I was going to say 12 or 14. That's about right.
And that's 6 or 7 people right now doing that. I have to. My hat is off to them. I think the number is probably high in my gut feeling, but I agree with James that it's and also with you, Syed, that it's out of scope. But I don't think it needs to be. I don't think it needs to match what the 0 launch. I mean, we did the 0 launch, and I've seen how much work is going on, and it's a large multiple on what we did for the 0 launch. Not to undermine that at all.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here if that's okay, because we are getting pushed against time. I'm going to suggest that as these tips only they haven't been as long along in discussion. It's the first time, and the same as Ian had a chance to discuss his tips a week ago. And Jerry, I'm going to say that we may have time on tomorrow's call to come back to these tips, and I'm going to suggest that we delay a day before we vote on them for the week. So other than that,